Hey John, I wanted to leave you some feedback on your rough draft. So I think that this is going to work well. I think that you have a good story, just number one, and number two, I think that you have a good story for the given prompt. And I think that in this draft, you have a pretty good sketch of. Of your story. So I think that you've got plenty to work with here. So nice work on that. What I want to do now is kind of walk you through what you have, and give some suggestions for revision. So I feel like this opening paragraph is just kind of like you getting yourself started on the narrative. I'm not sure that it really does much other than state the obvious. So I think a stronger way to begin this narrative is what we talked about in class in medias res. So just drop the reader in the middle of things instead of just kind of giving these general ideas about it. And so this might be the way to start it, right? Starting with the setting. So let's just say that you do indeed start here. I think that you've got a lot of good ideas here in terms of building the tension. I want you to go back and rethink the structure of some of your sentences, because you've got a lot of ideas crammed in a single sentence, which makes them kind of hard to follow. So I want to encourage you to slow down your pace a little bit, and quite possibly maybe even expand this single paragraph into 2, maybe 3 paragraphs. And so let's talk a little bit about lower order concerns and higher order concerns at once here. First off, when you have proper nouns like Planet Fitness and Rangeline, I think was the street, yep, that you mentioned, you need to treat them, you need to capitalize them, right? So like you capitalize Walmart here, you need to do the same thing with all of your proper nouns. Also pay attention to your repetition. And so so make sure you edit that out. And better myself, that's a pretty broad term there. So, and you might even think about people who may not be familiar with Planet Fitness. And so you might want to describe specifically what you wanted to do. You know, did you want to work out? Why did you want to work out? Were you working on cardio, weightlifting? Was it not just about physical appearance, but also about emotional and mental health, right? There's a lot of stuff that you can do right here to expand that I think would help the reader know who you are. And that's one of the things that's missing right off the bat. We don't really know who you are. It would also be nice for us to know why you fell in love with it. So this would be a good place to build setting and descriptive details. So paint a picture of Planet Fitness for us. This is a sentence that I was talking about. It's these 2 sentences that I get what you're trying to say, but the order of your sentences are kind of unclear. So let me read this out loud to you. On this day, I had to go buy some groceries at Walmart, which at the roads were bare as I ended working out at around 10 p.m. So that's some really confusing syntax there. I understand what you're trying to say is you worked out late until about 10, but you had an errand to run after your workout, which was to buy groceries at Walmart. And because it was so late, there weren't a lot of cars on the road. Okay, so I recommend maybe breaking this sentence down into 2 or 3 sentences. Same thing here. Right here is really where it gets confusing since COVID, I guess. And I kind of get what you're saying here, but I think about how you can say that more formally, I suppose. There's a big gap in time between you driving on the street to you walking into the store. And so I would recommend making these 2 separate paragraphs, and maybe, to expand the time, make the transition in time more clear. But you could also build in some descriptive detail. Do your best to not use second person you. When you write professionally, it's too informal, and you really don't mean you, the reader, because the reader wasn't there. It was You, the writer. So what you want to say here is, I could tell the pile, right? Because it's not the reader, it's you. Um, I really like the detail of you saying, um, of you talking about the sign. Um, and you might expand on this idea. Why wasn't it a rare sight to see homeless people sleeping? This can also help you build setting, because remember, one of the things that we need is a clear sense of setting. And I gave you some advice on expanding Planet Fitness, but we still don't know where we are geographically. So that I assume that this is in Joplin. I might be wrong, but you might paint a picture of Joplin and the socioeconomic status of the community. Because I think that this is an interesting detail. Why is it not a rare sight? And it can also lead to the fact that even though it's not a rare sight, many people choose to not see the homeless, which makes your act so different. Here's a nice place to maybe expand as well. So instead of using summary, maybe say, I had to return again for another trip, and there he was in the pile of blankets, and so I was persuaded, right? And then fill in some of the details of how this odd relationship of sorts begins building. You also haven't described him, so it would probably be some good idea for us to get a sense of how old he is, the sound of his voice, things like that. I so at this point you need to figure out where to take this thing, and he asked you to talk, and you admit it feels a little creepy, but you still said sure, right? And so the reader's going to want to know what the conversation was and how you reacted during and at the end of the conversation, right? So you can bring this thing to a close. So I would argue that there's a good place to reinforce two ideas. You are probably the first person who, or maybe the only person who saw him, who treated him like an actual person, and he's probably very lonely, and therefore he saw this opportunity to try to connect with another person. And I think that it might be a good idea to try to reinforce the idea that I was saying earlier here. It's the fact that even though, seeing homeless people is not a rare thing, unfortunately, most people choose to not see them. And what does it mean when we truly take the time to see the homeless and not ignore them and give them dignity, right? And I would argue that that is what you're doing here. So I think those are the areas that I would expand. In terms of those sentence level edits, reading your submission out loud and listening for those kind of awkward kind of places will help with that. All right, thanks.